because I assured that, I mean, I can tell that obviously we haven't been doing this monthly lately, but basically in this case, it was because we have very special invite this time. And Roberto needs no introduction.
Thanks.
He's the founder of State of Art Academy. State of Art Academy has been a close friend of this house since long ago. It was our first associated school. I think it was like maybe 10 years ago. And then Academy Days, which was to me personally the main and most important archives event in the industry back in the days. It was our yearly keynote. So every feature that you guys are using nowadays was introduced during that event. So Roberto, welcome. We're glad to
Thank
have you
you.
here.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have 90
Um,
minutes, important to say, because
yeah,
if I leave
sure.
you with these two guys talking about plugins and archives, this could last forever. So
Yeah, we can. We have a lot of stuff to
let's
say.
go.
We have a lot of stuff to say. A lot of stuff to show, and I'm happy to be here. I can see a lot of students in the chat. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to have this live, webinar, I would say. Small disclaimer, okay? Today is about ideas, I would say. It's a friendly chat between me and Paul and Jaime. You know, the idea is to show some thoughts, some workflows without going too much in deep with, all the examples. But, I love to found solutions, to problems. So this is all about that. And we're going to see something about ForcePack, something about RailClone, something that it's in the middle, maybe other softwares, not just the two plugins. So I think we can start, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
sounds good to me. I would just add to that, this is a live stream, and the point of doing it live is to be interactive. So if you've got any questions or comments about what we're showing,
Yeah, that would
then
be
do
great.
pop them in the comments section there, and we'll deal with them at opportune moments when there's a pause.
Okay.
By the way, as usual, again, this will be a conversation, of course, between Paul and Roberto. I will be taking care of the questions. Guys, be patient. We will try as usual to stick those questions between block and block. Okay, so let's kick it.
So let's start the timer, okay?
Yeah.
So first, I prepared some slides for each topic. And one very important thing that I have to discuss with students every time we have a masterclass is about presets in ForcePack. The presets are great, of course, because you can have something in a matter of seconds, and we can't live without presets. Of course, it would be even better if we start making our own preset, but thanks God, we have ForcePack presets. And the thing is, what happens is if you use them as they come, sometimes you can have some issues, some problems, not about the preset itself, but about the look that you can get. But we are going to get there in a second. Today, I want just to show you some ideas to improve your work with presets and to get something like these example I have on the screen. And so let's say we have some, let's say problems to solve, but I don't want to call them problem. Let's say that when we use presets, sometimes we have lack of variations, and nature is chaotic. So if you have a grass field, that probably means you have 10, 20 different type of small, plants, together. And, if you use a preset, you probably have 1, 2, 3, which is okay, but, we can do something more. So we want more variations, I would say. The other thing about presets is that if I use a preset and somebody else uses the same preset, we get the same result in 2 different renders. So in what I want to have is some uniqueness. in the end. And the last problem is, the polygon count can rise very quickly, because mainly every preset is thought about, is made in a way that that should cover the entire area without holes, right? So, you may end up with a lot of polygons, a lot of objects, a lot of, plants. And in that case, when you work on something close to you, you maybe want to use detail mode, and that's when the poly count goes up. When you go far away, then you can use the large preset, but the problem could be that if the ground is not flat, since a large preset is basically a disk of many plants together, you can see beneath those plants if you have some like slopes and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to solve is these three problems, and one idea is to not use just one forest pack. And I know that it makes me laugh, because sometimes people are like lazy and they don't want to use more than 1-2 presets, but actually it doesn't work. So if my way to use them is to be patient, to go little by little. And the problem is, at the beginning is not going to look nice, because you're going to get only a few plants spawning on the ground, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good because you're not covering the whole area. But if you are like a little bit patient, and you work little by little, you can cover the entire area in a matter of minutes if you follow some ideas, okay? And of course, you can have more randomness. You can have different type of plants if you use more forest pack than just one. And also, you can have different distribution maps, which means that a type of plant can end up in a place, another one in another place. And if you think in real life, if you have one plant spawning, there's no other plants spawning in the same place. So it's kind of natural, as a way of thinking. And in terms of, having your life easier, we can also think about making a hierarchy of forest pack. Because if you have 9-10 different forest pack in your scene for a grass field, then what happens if you change the spline, or what happens if you change the surface? You have to, normally if you don't make a hierarchy, you need to go and go through all of them and update all of them one by one, but it's very time consuming. Now, probably there's other ways to do this, but this is my way. So and I'm open to suggestions, Paul. So if you see me doing anything weird or crazy or maybe unnecessary, please tell me. So now I will switch to 3ds Max, and is visible my screen? Is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So here I have just a full preset. Of course, I always use a spline to start with. In my way, I never select forest pack and click directly on an object. So I always use a spline, or I go with icon mode. So I go for an icon mode, I click on the spline, I create a full preset, clicking just on the geometry, I click on the library as everybody does. And then, I select, from the surface, the plane beneath. And as you can see here, surfaces, I have auto mode on. So if the surface change, the forest pack change, and then, I click on there and I apply the forest pack on the surface. And then the second forest pack, so this is the second forest pack, has to be a child of the first one, okay? In order to automatically get the same spline and the same surface. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the distribution mode in the forest pack. So give me a second. I have too many 3ds Max open. Yeah, it's getting crazy. My computer is
It's very brave
you
of
know.
you, Roberto, to
Yeah,
open multiple copies.
I'm trying my best. I hope it's gonna work. The thing is, you know, we are also live, so I think is suffering a little bit. Give me a
Yeah.
second. So basically, what I want to do now is I want to change the. Wait a second. I want to change the uh, distribution map. Give me a sec. You see, the live always brings some problems into the you know. Come on, wake up, computer.
It wouldn't be real otherwise,
Huh?
Roberto. It wouldn't be real otherwise. So let's, you know.
Yeah, we always have
Give
this
me.
problem when you've got your streaming software on 3ds Max, like grinds to a halt. And if you've got multiple copies of Max open as well, that's probably just compounding the issue.
Okay, I'm sorry. Give me a second. It's gonna end well. I hope so. Let me. Come on. I'm sorry.
No worries.
All right, we go. So distribution, I changed from full to random bands, and this is what I want. And of course, with random bands, you can, since the map has some gradients, you cannot see them probably, but there's some gray dots, some white dots, some black dots, forest pack spawn in the, you know, because of a threshold. So you can change the threshold from here. So depending on, you know, how much plants you want to scatter, you can work with the threshold. And if you go like, I don't know, 50%, forest pack means say, okay, everything brighter than 50% gray is a valuable, you know, spot to spawn my plants. And normally this is the difficult part because people, if I render now, I hope it's gonna work. You see, people stop there because this is not looking good, of course. So you need just to, you know, believe in the procedure, in the workflow. So now I select the second forest pack, and of course, what I want to do is I want to assign, instead of assign the same spline and the same you know, plane, I want to go in the area section and select with the button here with the link, select the forest pack. And I'm going very, you know, okay, cool. So you select the forest pack you already have, which is the king of all of them, I would say, or the queen, wherever. And then I select the spline from here, and you see it happens. It spawn, and then in the surface, I do the same. So from the surface tag, I get, you know, it from the same forest pack, and yeah, whatever. Come on. Can I do that? Oh, sorry. I select the same forest pack. I need to select this one. I'm a little bit nervous because, you know, 3ds Max may not work as expected. So, you know, and
these are new features you're using here, Roberto. If people haven't seen them before, these they're not so well known, and they were introduced in Forest Pack 8, I think. So all quite new. So it's really nice to see that you've adopted them in your workflow.
Well, I have to, you know, to save time because I'm lazy. So is a great, you know, is a great feature. And then that, you know, I'm keeping the same spline and the same surface from the first forest pack. I can just change, you know, a random, I know, and use random bands again. I love this one anyway because it's so easy to use and randomize the, you know, the plants very well. And I can change, I can, you know, I can find another density for the random bands. I can change the threshold. I can have another rotation maybe, okay, and start scattering. So the next step would be, you know, to make another forest pack, and, you know, picking the same forest pack, you know, to generate, you know, the third one from the same spline, the same surface, and that's it. And, you know, in a while, if you are if you are, you know, I would say, patient enough, you're gonna get a very, complicated but automated landscape, I would say, automated grass field, and is gonna work well, and that's it. So this is the first idea behind how to use these presets. From experience, it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit because the problem is people stop before getting these nice results, because you can see just a few of them, and in your brain you're not used to that, and it doesn't look that good. So, but the good idea is, the good news is, once you have this, you can save this file, you can bring this file into another scene and just change, the first forest pack spline and the first forest pack surface, and everything else will update immediately. So since we can't save yet multiple forest pack in a preset, this is anyway a preset we can do, just saving the 3ds file, the 3ds max file. So that's the first idea. I
think that's great. I think, like you say, it's the combination, because I remember actually asking you at one point, like, how do your students get such nice grass? And I didn't realize at the time you were using our presets. I thought you had some other fancy trick you were doing. So it was really nice to see how you actually go about doing that, just by combining them. And I think that new approach whereby you're really easy, it's a little bit of time to set up, sure, but once you've done it, all you've got to do is change the spline in one forest pack object, and all 8 or however many you've attached together will all update automatically. So it's once you've got it set up, it's quite quick. And you could always save that out into a file, couldn't you? And then just merge it into a new scene, and you've got a nice grass preset ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. We've got some questions, I think, possibly.
Yeah, we got a bunch of them, right?
Check on those.
So Lars is asking, so if we are actually beginning to have a real ecosystem.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, probably, yes.
Do you mean like a biome, I assume? I mean, that's kind of the idea of adding this feature alongside the forest sets feature, which is kind of a container that allows you to add anything actually to it. So either the geometry you're scattering, the surfaces that you're using to scatter on, or the areas and so forth. You can put all those in a container and then share that container between multiple forest pack objects. That's another workflow. But we added both of these features at about the same time in an attempt to make it easier to connect multiple forest pack objects together to create, as you say, a kind of like a biome type system. So this is the kind of first step towards making that easier. Yeah.
Cool. There's a question from Mark Frankman. Why use both a spline and a surface? Can you use just a surface?
Do you want to take that one, Roberto, or do you want me to?
Well, every time I use just a surface, some problems kicks in, because maybe I don't want, the entire forest pack on the forest pack on the entire surface. So then I have to put a spline anyway. But then, I've seen in my experience, I don't know if it changed it now, but, in my experience, it works better if you start from spline and then you add a surface. Probably it works with the surface alone.
Yeah, I think personally, I think the only reason, most of the time you wouldn't use the only reason, so you can use a surface on its own, absolutely fine. But as you say, that was a test where you were filling the whole surface with the grass, so you didn't really need one. But most of the time, actually, you don't want the grass on every piece of the terrain.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you have surfaces to define areas within a surface, spline areas. So I think it's matter of choice. But if it is just a simple surface and you need to cover from one end to the other, you don't need a spline. You can just go straight for a surface. It's fine.
It comes from the way I was working in the past, since I always move the spline in the sky. So if I'm inside the camera and I'm watching the scene from the camera, I can always look at the spline, see the spline through the camera, and make a spline. Click on the spline, because because maybe the terrain is covered by, something, and it's easier for me to generate new forest pack. I've seen a question about, if you have to connect the new forest pack to the first one or to the previous one, the last one. I would say it's better to connect them to the first one because the first one has the spline and the surface. So I would do that. I would pick one, rename them. Once, if you have a first forest pack and you put a name on it, you can also save writing here. You select that, you write here, I don't know, FP, I don't know, first, and you press enter, and you will always find, the first forest pack there in the quick selection tool in 3ds Max. So it's easier. I think we need to move on. The second
there's more questions coming, but obviously we cannot attend all of them.
We can do that at the end.
Yeah, we can do that at the end, yeah.
So the second thing about forest pack is, post-production on vegetation, because, we can work a lot on vegetation in 3D. Personally, I don't like to work in 3D. I prefer to work in Photoshop. That's my, background. And so, most of the time you don't want to, personally, I want to move out of 3ds Max as soon as possible. The thing is, once you're in Photoshop, in order to have a nice post-production, you need assets. So as you have 3D models for, making your scenes in 3ds Max, you need assets to, do a decent post-production. And those assets are, photos you can take with your camera, passes you can have from Corona or V-Ray, wherever it is. And so, what I want to solve normally when I go into post-production is the lack of depth that sometimes you have. Because personally, I don't like to render the Z depth. I don't like to render the fog in the render. The problem is sometimes clients change their minds. Maybe you don't want fog anymore and you already have rendered, so you don't want to re-render and lose time doing that. So I want to have more, I want like my vegetation to get more, depth in the render. Sometimes it looks too flat. And I think it's because of the translucency on the shaders, how the light reacts, passing through all the leaves. Normally what happens when you have translucent materials is the shadow is not that dark. And so you lose contrast, and so you lose depth. Also, what I want normally, to do in Photoshop is to change the shader itself. Maybe I don't want the grass that, green, or maybe I want to make my trees, I don't know, yellow on the top because it's autumn, I don't know. And I want to do that in Photoshop. And last, I want to add volumetric effects like fog, smoke, and mist. And I like to do that in Photoshop because I can be like a director, I want specifically that type of cloud in that position. I want to design my smoke. I want to design the fog and the mist. And I can do that in Photoshop in no time. So because of that, what we need is, to solve this problem, we need, first of all, some masks and some passes from the render itself. And I'm going to show you what you need to render. And then I would never, stop saying this. You need to rely on references. Don't trust your memory because, problem is our memory is never right or almost never right. The brain, how it's done, how it's made, is tricking you. You think you remember something and maybe it's not right. So the thing is, watch photos, not renders, and take ideas from photos. So I switch to my screen, and here I have some, in the render elements, I have some type of maps here. You can click on add and add some render elements. You can render some additional passes with some masks. And in this case, if you look at this one, I don't know if you see it, you know, I zoom in. This is a mask that makes the top part of each plant white and the bottom part black. And I normally use to render these masks, you know, to maybe increase the translucency, the effect of the light passing through the leaves just on the top. And I keep you know, the bottom part dark, I would say. And then we have some other text map like this one. We can render some noises for some reason. Maybe we want some variations on the grass or the vegetation. Maybe we want, you know, to add some effects like, you know, on the soccer field, you know, you have like stripes and stuff like that. Also, we have row component diffuse. This is one of the most important passes because this row component diffuse in V-Ray is called raw total lighting, is basically the light on the scene without the textures. And with this one, you can do a lot of stuff like reshading your shader, you know, fixing the problem with vegetation and painting snow on elements or on objects and whatever. Another thing, like I also normally render the reflection pass, the translucency pass, and the source color, which is the texture. If you want, you can also render the wire color, because if you turn this black and white, it's basically like a random mask. You know, each type of plant has a different color. So you can use that in Photoshop. You can then render the normal shading, which allow you to change the lighting of a scene also. So how to create this, for example, these masks. You just click in here, you click on add, you select, you know, text map, you press OK, and then here in this slot, you just drag some maps from the material editor. And for example, the one you want to get the top part white is a gradient ramp that goes from black to white, nothing more. And it's mapped in planar mode from object Z, X, Y, Z. So one thing I can tell you, some of the, you know, maps from 3ds Max works, some of them don't. Noises, and every map you can, you know, change the mapping, you know, from a normal to planar, from object X, Y, Z, or maybe like a noise like this, which is, you know, world X, Y, Z, they works fine. Once you render, of course, you know, you save an XR, you keep all the passes inside the same XR, and then, of course, you switch to Photoshop. And for example, here, you see I have the raw render with all the passes, and I'm 32-bit. You can turn everything 16-bit if you want, but just an example here. For example, you see I have the source color, which is basically the texture pass, and on top, if you take the raw component diffuse and you turn it on and you put in multiply, basically you have the light of the scene plus the textures of the scene. And this is really cool because you can then change just the color of the grass beneath. So the problem is when you do post-production, most of the time you want to change color of, I don't know, grass or whatever, and you put a hue saturation on top of everything, and it doesn't work well. And the problem is you're not changing just the color of an object, you're also changing the light color and the reflection color. And it's not right. You should only change the color of the diffuse. So in this case, you see, then I have, I don't know, some exposure control. I have the I have back translucency in linear dodge add. I have reflection. So you see, I basically built again the render using those passes. But then if I put a hue saturation in the middle here, okay, I can just turn it on, and I can see I can just change just the color of the grass, not the color of everything else, which is great, which is great, you know. And you see now I have some orange flowers on the top just with one hue saturation. And this is how to re-render without re-rendering, okay? Using passes to build your image back. And another thing you can do is you can use masks. So what to do if I want to use a mask? I don't know. I go to the passes. I show up the mask I want to use. I go to the channels. And since this is black and white, you can control click on any thumbnail, which is, they are all the same. And you load the white area. And then you go back into the layers. You don't need this anymore. And you can just make like an exposure or a curve or a use iteration. And you see, because of the selection you had, this adjustment now has only that area. And now if I change the exposure, only that part, see, only that the top of each I would say grass will be brighter. And this is a very cool way to just fix and work on a specific part of the plant. Another thing that you may want to do is to use just the raw component diffuse on top of your scene. I will show you how to do that because it basically brings back the contrast you want. Another thing you can do is to use the normal shading, which is a magical kind of black magic, pass, because you have a different color for each normal. So each face that looks, like every face that looks in one direction goes it goes in one color. So if you put this a channel mixer adjustment on top and you put in monochrome and then you put red and green on on different sides, then now you have you see some areas are darker and some areas are brighter because they are areas looking at different direction. So you can change the blending mode of this normal map now, and maybe, I don't know, you have more shadows on one side than the other, and then you can control the amount with this sliders. And the cool thing is you can rotate the light just by changing the color of the normal map, because if you change the hue, so in between here you put a hue saturation, you see you are changing the color, you're changing the direction of the light. This is a little bit tricky to do, but and with grass is even more trickier because you have a lot of elements. But if you try this on a simple shape, you will understand. There is a tutorial also on the SOA Academy YouTube channel about this if you're interested. Anyway, when you are dealing with like a full render like this one, of course we have our way to plan the post-production, and it's important to we work in 16-bit because otherwise it's impossible to work in 32-bit in Photoshop after a while. The most important pass we want to keep 32-bit is the Z-depth, which is the distance between the camera and all the other objects. So this is the Z-depth, and you see it's a smart object because we want to keep this 32-bit even if we go 16-bit. And so this is the Z-depth. And let's say I want to put some, I don't know, I want to put some smoke in between those trees. Then I can just use, a curve to say, all right, we can, we can contrast the Z-depth as much as we want. But actually what I want to do is I want the invert of this. And in a 32-bit file, there's no invert. So I need to go with levels and then just invert these two sliders, and I have the mask I want. So now I can basically, take this and bring this into the other file. So I just Control Alt Shift E, and then take this, which is my new mask, go back in the file, go back in the channels, because channels is where masks belong, and then I paste the mask there. I finally Control click on that, and I can go back on the layers, go back in the effects folder, where this stuff actually should belong to, and I make a new, I make a new group, and I put the mask as, as a mask of the group. So now I can do whatever I want inside this group. I can start painting, with the color of, the sky. I said the color of the sky, not the black color. So you see, I can just paint and maybe rotate my brush, you see, and I can start painting some clouds behind those trees. But actually, it looks like it's behind those trees because of the Z-depth mask on the group. And this is an image from one of our courses, Umberto. So he did a great job painting those, I would say, those clouds little by little, one by one, with different brushes. And remember that if you want to make a brush is made like this. You can, find a photo of a cloud and then invert that, and then you can just make one layer out of that. And if you go to edit, define brush preset, you can get the shape of that cloud as a brush. And the last thing about this example is the fact that, we are looking for, when it's about, to improve the contrast of the trees, you can get that by looking for the row component diffuse, which is this pass, and bring it on the top. I'll make it very quick because we are running out of time for this example. And you see there's a lot of contrast in this, and I can just normally turn this in overlay mode and go down with the opacity. And it gives you, of course, a little bit more of contrast in the shadows. Of course, then you have to control this, maybe with a curve, maybe with some, opacity going down. We never keep every effect like 100%. We do something and then we say, okay, let's go down 50%. And maybe we get the final result with multiple passes, which is very natural, I would say, in the end. So we went from, something pretty flat to something with more depth, in this way. That's the thing. That's the second, example.
Thank you, Roberto. You almost made that look easy, but I think what you when you summarize the information like that, it sort of disguises the sheer amount of research and work you've done discovering and creating those techniques. You got a lot of positivity in the comments there. Someone recommended your post-production course, so I assume you have a production course that you can.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a marketing event, guys, but I'm pasting here Roberto's course if you want to check it out. Okay.
Yeah, everything I know is there. I mean,
there you go.
And I update the course every month, every now and then, and I'm open to ideas. So because that course is something that I want to keep improving. So this is it for this example. We can finally close this first 3ds Max file, and we can jump to the next example, which is probably the most difficult one regarding 3ds Max and how much my computer can handle. So the next example is about biomes. So let me close 3ds Max for a second. No. And here we go. So the next topic is about, so I'm going to show you some slides now. The idea behind this came from Jaime Diaz. Is the name of the guy? Okay, cool. I've seen a video of this procedural landscape, and that was very cool. And I just spend like a few days trying my best to replicate that. And so why we should go with procedural biomes? which, I mean, this image is completely procedural. I mean, once you have something like, the basic of it done, then you can just pull the edges of a simple mesh for the ground, and you get what you need, which is it's a good idea if probably you have that kind of terrain more than once in your projects. Okay, so what we want to do is this: we want to automate it as much as possible, our biomes. Remember that a certain type of vegetation goes in a certain type of landscape type, and I would do a little bit of research the next time you approach a new biome, because maybe like a type of plant doesn't belong to a type of shader or a type of part of the world. Even if your brain even if you don't understand that immediately, your brain will tell you in the back, oh, there's something wrong. If you use a pine tree in something like these, tropical beach. Anyway, I don't want to manually scatter every plant, so I want that stuff to happens by itself. And then also I want all my materials to blend together, flawlessly, and without me being like there to paint stuff manually. So the idea is what we want is to have a very, very, very simple model of the landscape, and something like a few vertices. If we have too many vertices, then it becomes very difficult to manage the entire terrain, the entire landscape. So less vertices is good. And then what we want is, we want to find some ways to control all the shaders and all the scattering. And we have those ways. We have, for example, we have distance between objects. We have a slope angle. We have the height over certain objects, and so on. So we are going to use those things in order to, get what we want. And now we can jump into the scene. And, this is basically, is it visible? Just check. Okay, cool. So this is what we want, but, to get here, we need to go like 2 steps behind and get something like this. So as you can see here, what we have is just a plane, right, with some polygons and a turbo smooth on top. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to model the landscape, selecting the edit poly here, and maybe edges or vertices, and we are going to show the cage. So I can still see, you see, the edges, and just 1 instead of 4 or whatever. And the second thing is we probably want some water, and we want water to interact with the landscape. But the problem, we have a problem here. So the problem comes from the shaders, and we want water to make something like a wet sand effect. So we need with this shader here, we need to keep track of the distance from the water, and maybe the water, we want some waves, or we want, the foam you have on the edges. So we want to keep the distance from the water to the landscape. And the problem is you cannot have both. You cannot keep the distance from the water, and the water cannot keep the distance from the landscape at the same time. And that's why we have a different box behind here underneath the water, which is basically, for the landscape. So we're going, we're keeping the distance not from the water, but from this box, which is not renderable. So if you want something to not be visible, you right click and object properties, and you uncheck renderable. That's a way to not see that object. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the water and this box, and then just group them. So I can, I can move the water and the other box will move with the water. And the shader is the second problem. So let's see the shader. Now the shader is pretty simple. Now we have a shader for the water, which is very simple right now. And we have a shader for the ground. Now, the shader for the ground is basically multi-layered, a corona layered material. You can have something like that in V-Ray or any other render engine probably. And the base material is the wet sand. Now, if I render, you will see something probably, I hope so. You see, everything is just wet sand. And the reason is because, I've only the base material turned on. If I select and turn on the second material, now everything is dry sand, which is the second material. And this is exactly the moment where we turn on the corona distance. And the corona distance is telling you, okay, let's keep some distance between, from the plane, from the water. And you can decide how much you want to stay away from the water. And here, you see, there is like a map inside the corona distance. It's because we don't want the edge to be uniform. So because this is not easy to understand or is not easy to explain, I prepared another example here. So you see, here I have basically, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, the camera just shut down probably. The thing is, the corona distance is, you see, now is just uniform because it works as a gradient. But we need to understand one important concept, which is remapping. And remapping means that instead of black and white gradient, maybe you want something else. So the thing is, I jumped to Substance Designer for a second to explain what remapping means. So let's say you have a black and white texture, but I don't know, maybe you don't want black anymore, you want another color. So in this case, remapping means that instead of black and white, instead of black, you have red, and instead of white, you have blue. And in the same way here, if I have just a corona distance and, inside diffuse, this is what I have. But if I place the corona distance inside a gradient map, then I'm remapping basically the gradient. So I can just go from here, maps, general, gradient ramp, source map, and then I can, link this to what I need, for example, the base color right now. And then I'm going to change the type of gradient from linear to mapped. And now I get the same, but now I can change these colors. So instead of having like black to white, I can have, I don't know, something like, I don't know, maybe I can do, normally I do this, I can make some points in the gradient, like this. And then I move this one in the middle here, and this one in the middle here. So you see, I have something like a wave because I have a dark color and then a brighter color and then a darker color and brighter color and so on. So you see now I have something that looks like a wave, that starts from the same object. And since the gradient ramp has a noise, I can just add some noise here. And you see, I'm trying to get there and I have something that looks like waves now. And I can use this in multiple occasions. Like, I don't know, maybe I can, blend the wet sand in a more, random way. I can generate some foam waves. So let me show you an example here, which should work Sorry, should work probably fine. See, what we have here is water, is a water shader plus some white shader on top, and we have this kind of, let me show you. See, is a water shader inside the corona layer material, and then as a second layer we have some foam, which is just a white shader, and then in the mask we have a corona distance, and then we have gradient ramp that change, you see, the corona distance into something with 3 waves, and you see we have some waves here, 1 to 3, and some noise. And the cool thing is, if now I just move the landscape, selecting the edit poly version, see, it looks like the water is basically coming up. And this is something you can do, or you can select the water and just move it down, and you see it basically updates because of the distance from the landscape. And one thing that I normally do to simulate the water is I just animate this box and this plane on the timeline, and I turn on the motion blur on the camera, so I have the feeling that the water is moving, and I don't have the still effects from the water, and that's very cool. What else? Well, you can do the same with the other, like for example, the grass is like the normal sand with just more distance. It's different for the rock, because the rock doesn't happen because of the distance from the water. It becomes because of the, I would say, angle of the geometry. So if I look in here, I can show you with the first example. I'm sorry, I'm having problems with moving between examples is a little bit complicated. So the thing is, if I show you here the rock, which is the number 3, layer number 3, is using a fall-off, okay, to work. And the fall-off works in this way. The fall-off work because of the towards away mode. So it means that it's looking at the scene from the top, because the world z-axis is selected. And if I render, and this is only visible if you render, see, if I change this fall off, it disappeared. So this is basically a way to recognize where your shape is basically looking down, and it's a great tool in order to have, like I don't know, rocks in this case, or maybe when you want to add snow on top of trees, you can add a fall off, to have a mask that understand the angle of your geometry. Any question about this?
Nope. No
I
single
think
question.
it's all sinking in nicely. I think it's interesting, that technique, because it's basically those that use slope angles in Forest Pack. This is the way of doing it, but for textures, right? So
yes. So give me a second that I need to turn on the air for my camera because it's too off.
okay.
Give me a second, guys. I'm sorry. Since we are making some masks because of the ship for the shaders, in the same way, we have the same mask for the for the forest pack, basically. So I can turn on the last example. Here, Eden, I have some plants I've taken, and the thing is, we are going to use those plants in different forest pack. And here you have, like, I don't know, like some basic, like low plants for the grass, and the same, distribution. If I open this forest pack, you see the same corona distance I'm using to spawn the grass on the shader is now here in the distribution mode with the same map channel. And it's very cool because I don't have to work again. I just need to, steal the same maps from the final shader. Now this looks a little bit more maybe too complicated to explain, but trust me, is the same shader we have here with the texture on. So what I do is I don't have texture till the end. And then at the very end, I add all the textures when I'm ready, when I'm happy with the result of how those materials blend together. One thing about displacement we can say is that in this scene, the rock has some displacement, and is not a problem because the shader here in Corona blend all the layers, in terms of displacement. So you can have many shaders without displacement at all, just with a normal map, and then just one with the displacement, and it's gonna work fine. That's the thing. When you move, then the polygons here. Sorry. The polygons here, the landscape, like for example, I can select just this, and I press shift and drag. You see all the maps will change. The only thing you need to remember to do is to make the spline on the top big enough, to cover the entire area. But that's something you do only once. You can do the spline as big as the whole scene, and also the water has to be as big as you need, in order to push those plants away, and to spawn some rocks. So in here, I'll try something very brave for my computer. I'll try to render this. If something explodes, just remember about me. Just remember me. No, it's very cool. And after I finished with this, I had to, I'll go back in the right moment. Great. I had to, just go in another scene and just bring this with me, and just pulling up and down some vertices, and everything is then is working by itself, and I don't have to do this again. Sorry if this is a little bit clunky, but
I think it's a really interesting technique, and I think even if you don't go fully procedural, a whole landscape, then there's loads of stuff you can use here. Parts of it that you can use, especially for mapping different materials onto terrains and things like that, and combining that with forest pack. I think I wanted to mention just quickly, I think there's correct me if I'm wrong, but the one thing I think with using distance textures in Corona and V-Ray is that the forest pack object has to be at the world origin.
Yes.
In order for that to map correctly. So if you are using distance textures, just doesn't matter where the areas are, but the forest pack kind of icon or whatever has to be at 0, 0, 0 in order for it to accurately pick up the distance textures.
So every time you create a new forest pack, the first thing is maybe going in icon mode, which is better in this case. You select the icon and you move it to 0, 0, 0.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks, Matt. I was forgetting that. My suggestion, if you want to deal with something like this, is to go little by little. just, start with the, a simple shape with a few materials, and then moving on little by little. Okay, we can move to the next topic, right? I can finally close this file. I hope people is not getting bored by this.
I don't imagine they are. I think it's all very interesting.
Yep. The next example is about, it may sound a little bit like a joke, okay? Because how we solve the problem. And so the thing is how to easily create custom graphs. And what I want to do is, get my own version of, like my own forest pack preset. And in order to do that, we went down in the garden to pick up some, grass blades. And, what we are trying to get is really good quality in the textures. And, the problem is nowadays, it's not a problem, but, the thing is not everybody use photogrammetry, which is great. Now it's also free, but there's a lot of problems coming with photogrammetry. So you need a nice camera, you need the right lens, and with something like grass, it's difficult because it's kind of flat, and when you take a photo, you need like uniform lighting, and you need to avoid some perspective problems. So we end up with a solution which is very, very atypical. And it may sound like a joke, but we just, I don't know if you see it from the camera, we just glue some, grass on a black cardboard and use the scanner we have on the printer, in the office. And it worked like charm. So we get something like 8K, images of grass in a minute without problem, and this is the quality actually. So and the pro of doing this is everything is flat, everything is perfect. There's no perspective problems, and also the light is uniform, and you don't have to work on fixing things like shadows or stuff like that. So that I'm sorry, but that's the solution for us. And also having our own grass, texture allow us to basically pack all the textures, like all the black and white textures, in one big colored texture to save some space, to save some work, after. And then what we used is we work with Substance Sampler to just load the texture and to get what we haven't, like on a map, like I don't know, glossiness map, like opacity map. So here, this is sampler. I am switching on my screen, and this is sampler just loading the starting texture. And when you drag and drop a texture in Substance Sampler, I can just show you. I can make a new project and load the texture in there. Give me a sec. I can just tell the software to turn my texture into here we go. I drag and drop my texture on the SBS AR panel, and I just pick image to material, bitmap to material. I click on import, and then in a matter of seconds, it should work fine. And you see.
Can I ask, Roberto, are you using the old bitmap to material one or the new AI powered one?
Sometimes the new AI doesn't work. So I try the new AI one. If it doesn't work, I use the old one.
Fair enough.
But all other, in the end, for something like this, it doesn't really change, I would say. And then I add another filter, which is the Atlas Creator, will allow you to have also the opacity map. See? So you see here, from here, you have the base color, you have the normal map, you have the roughness, you have, also the, if you scroll here, you have also the occlusion, you have also the opacity map and so on. So it's a very cool, way to get some maps for free, I would say. And then when it's over in Photoshop, you see this is our diffuse map. And then what I normally do is I pack more texture in one, and you can pack them only if those textures are black and white. So you open, I don't know, the translucency, you copy it, you go into a new file, you select just the channel you want to, work with from the channels, and you paste it. And then once you have done this with all of them, you have, the final result, which is this crazy colored textures, but it works nonetheless. What I suggest you is to put the most important texture in the green channel, because the green channel, I mean, it's not a myth, it's true. If you want to check online, it's true. The green channel has a little bit more information than the red and the blue. So something important like the glossiness maybe is worth it to be pasted in the green channel. Once you have something like this, then in 3ds Max you can get the red, the green, and the blue channel one by one. But then what we have done is this: we created a plane, just a plane, with the texture of our grass applied to that, and then it's time to cut. So what you want to do is to add an editable poly. Now it really is really prepared here, and just use the cut tool to cut each single blade. And my suggestion is to keep like the same number of vertices on the right side and on the left side. So then you can, after you cut them, you can connect them, from left to right, and then from top to bottom. You can have another cut that, cut the mesh in half. So you can then add turbo smooth maybe, and have that kind of symmetry available in order to bend your piece of grass in the center, because grass is bended maybe in the center along, the veins of it. And, it's a long procedure, but let's say that with 20 pieces, you see this one are the single one, and you want to move the pivot, at the base of each one of these. And then the next part would be, you see, something like this. For each single blade, you make some variations. So you copy them and you add some modifiers like the bend modifier, or maybe like more than one modifier to get like a bunch of them which share the same texture, but they look different. And this is it. After that, you may want to go in two different ways. If you're lazy, I'm joking about it, you can just load all of them in one big forest pack. So if you look at this forest pack, I just load all the variations, which are a lot. Could be something like, I don't know, if you take 20 type of, different blades multiplied by 5 iterations, can be like hundreds of them. So we have hundreds of different geometries. And I've seen that it really help, the realism if in distribution area, in the distribution panel, you then pick clusters, to have a little bit of diversity, a little bit of randomness in between of them. So I would say if you look at grass, and I spend a lot of time looking at grass, when I go out with my kids, and I go around and I try to study how things works. There's like families of the same type of plant growing in the same spot. So this is exactly what you need, because a cluster, now if I clean the cluster, you will see that we have like really like one type of plant there, one type of plant there, and so on. Now, I would not be that strict, with this rule. So if you increase a little bit, I don't know, the roughness, the blurriness of the edges, the noise, you are letting Forest Pack to blend those different plants together a little bit, at least, and the end result is nice. The last thing I can tell you is maybe you can have one variation of this plant with a very dry effect, something like, I don't know, you take the green color, you turn it like yellowish and less saturated, and you have another forest pack with just those blades at the base of the other grass. Because if you look into like a real piece of grass, you will see that nature works because of light and water. And so if the plant can reach some light, it's green. If it can't reach light, it dies and and bend on the floor and becomes yellowish. So in this case, I would have two forest pack, one for the dead grass and beneath the nice one, I would say. And this is the idea. And of course, you can, once you have done this, it could take a day to do all of this. You have your own preset and sell them. And that's a nice idea, to create your own packs of grass.
I love that. I love that scanning approach instead of either full photogrammetry or even the sort of eight multi-angle lighting setup, which is obviously quicker than photogrammetry, but still quite a lot of work and processing. So scanning's such a big time saver. And then using Substance just to create the other maps. I mean, at the distances you're going to see these things from, you're never going to get in there that close and go, well, that normal map doesn't look perfectly right. It's got to look good enough, hasn't it, from the distances you're going to render from? So
yes, I mean, it also depends on the original texture, because our texture was like 8K. So I probably have this is the original one, right, where we pick all the pieces you see from the scanning and we just put them one close to the other. And if you zoom in, the amount of detail is amazing, is way more than what you normally need. And so if you wait enough in Substance Sampler, you get a normal map from an 8K scan, and trust me, it's enough.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you don't know how to import a texture from let's say we have a black and white texture and you want to import the black and white texture to another file, let's say, I don't know, let's say that this is the glossiness. Let's pretend this is the glossiness. Once you have one layer with the glossiness, you press Ctrl A, Ctrl C, you make a new file with the same size, of course, and then you jump into the channels, you select the channel you want to put that texture in, and you just Ctrl V, and you see now we have the glossiness just in that channel. And if you do the same with the translucency, with the opacity, after a while, I mean, after you paste all of them, you will have a crazy colored textures, but with all those effects, all those textures, all those attributes in it. And then the trick to get from that texture to something which is, again, black and white is to use the RGB tint, which is somewhere here, or anyway, you need to, once you have a texture, let me see if I have it here. No, I don't have it here, I'm sorry. Let me check. No, it's here. So you see, this is the texture, the crazy colored one. Let's say you want only the red channel from that one. You can use the map RGB tint, which is inside 3ds Max by default, and you put white in the red channel and black in the other two. And so you get the red channel map. And you do the same with the, of course, with the green, you see, and with the blue channels to get, all the other ones. And that's it.
Thank you.
So now we can finally jump to RailClone, right?
Yeah.
Actually, we have a comment, which
okay.
I think it's a comment that we always get in every live stream about RailClone crossroads intersections, and if you're gonna fix that. I mean, obviously it's on the roadmap, but it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. It's on the roadmap. It's not as easy to solve as you would think, because obviously roads aren't just a simple plain or flat surface. They've got curbs, gutters, drains, and then somehow trying to get all that stuff to Boolean together is quite tricky, especially when you consider that what RailClone isn't doing, like a lot of the solutions that do this kind of thing, they're generally generating the geometry themselves, so they're actually kind of an object that builds the geometry from nothing. Whereas what RailClone obviously does is it takes existing geometry and then allows you to build a plugin from that. So taking existing geometry from a scene and then getting that to intersect where roads meet, and then in the peculiar way that roads meet, is quite challenging. So it's not to say that we're not going to do it or not going to look at doing it, but it's just going to take quite a bit of R&D to try and make that all work. And it's on the roadmap, and it's something we asked a lot, so we are looking into it. But it's not something that you can fix with a few lines of code. It would be a whole other kind of side of the plugin that we need to work out. So that's fair, Jaime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think it's one of the most requested features in every live stream. So we're on it.
So do it.
It's this, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Even if things looks easier, in the end, they are not easy at the beginning. And the best solutions, look flawless because there's a lot of work behind. So, but anyway. Today, I want to speak with you, Paul, because we need to address some, thought about RailClone. Because Forest Pack is kind of easy, and people, keep saying that, RailClone is not easy. I want to say something about RailClone, and is the same, I think, about every software that is made of nodes, like Substance Designer. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Substance Designer, and I can see some similarities between RailClone and Substance Designer, or, for example, blueprints in Unreal or whatever it is. Every software with nodes inside can be very simple to use if what you want to do is simple.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to then move to something more complicated because you want to have some automation, or you want to, work a lot at the beginning and then have an easier life at the, after that, can't be that simple. There is a level of, knowledge you need to get, but it's a rewarding thing, So what I want to express is, yes, there's some thinking that you need to put into RailClone when you work with RailClone, but that there's a high reward in the end, after that thinking, after that, work. And I believe that the best thing we can do with RailClone is to, understand that which rules, we need to follow in order to work nicely with RailClone.
That's absolutely the key.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Yeah.
My goal today is to point those rules out for everybody. Okay. So, the thing is, and I speak with my experience. My experience brought me to the idea that at the beginning, RailClone was, okay, I want to do everything with just one object. I want to do like a shelf just with a box. And I want to take that box and every time, rotate it in different ways and make it big as I need. But I feel like that is exactly like when you need to build an actual shelf, right? You go to IKEA, you bought a shelf, and you open the box, and you have different type of, pieces, and that's probably the best way to start with RailClone. Thinking a little bit, okay, how many pieces do I need to build my objects? Okay,
It comes back to what you were saying earlier about references. Like, if you want to build a shelf, look at an IKEA flat pack or something like that. How are these things actually constructed, and really try and recreate those pieces, and then create the rule set that puts them back together again. Really.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, but you know what? It's not easy to force yourself to do it. And I'm speaking for myself, at the beginning, you want to, or at least I have this idea that I have to fix every problem just with one thing, to reuse things over and over. So that's probably the wrong approach, So as I said, brought there, simply but not simpler.
Roberto,
Yeah,
I mean, I think you nailed it when you said about the big reward you can get from RailClone, and how tough it is to get your hands on it on first step. In that sense, we're going to jump into RailClone once we are done with the Forcepack 9 beta, which should be the upcoming weeks. And one idea that we have is to start using presets in a way in which you can have some design patterns that come, pre-made.
sure.
Then you just can add your image to it. That way, you're gonna avoid people to make them think. And I don't want to sound negative in this sense, but you get things done right away. And then if you want to improve them, that's when you jump into your style editor and try new things. But the first step, you would get a bunch of
Anyway,
templates.
let's try to clean some room in the heads of people, like to say, okay, this is how you should work, if you want to make it easier. The second rule I want to talk about is bounding boxes. So when you make your object, when you prepare your modules, can be like a vertical plank, an horizontal plank, a cylinder, wherever it is. You need to think that the RailClone is looking at the size of that object as a bounding box, right? So, Paul, intervene if I'm saying something wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's how they butt objects up against one another.
So if you have like your plank, which is slightly, rotated, then you are not going to get one plank next to each other, because, the bounding box is bigger than the actual plank. So long story short, keep your stuff straight, on the axis. That's it. Nothing more. And the last rule, is for now, in like general rules, is you need to understand when to change generator. This is vital for me. Okay, so the wrong way would be, and I tried this and I failed in the past. I tried to do everything with just one generator, and of course it's not possible. So let's go to think about, like, for a second, about the first type of generator. The 1S generator, which is a one-dimensional generator, is basically a line of objects, right? So it's like one object after the other. I have a book. I just have a line of books now, and it's very cool because it's easier to use. It's easy to use, and I can randomize, the size of the books. I can randomize the placement of the books on the spline. And one thing you need to remember about the 1S generator is that it's standing up. So you see, I have like a book which is lay on the ground, but in the moment I put that book on, inside the 1S generator, it's standing up, and then I have a line of, books. And then the rules for the 2D array, which is bidimensional, okay, they're a little bit more. For example, first of all, if you think about the 2S array to 2D array as many 1S array, one on top of the other, That's it. So right, Paul, is
Yeah.
like starting from the bottom, right? So we have rows of 1S generators.
Exactly that. And the one below, the bottom, the one below the 1D array will always determine the position of the one above. So if the height of it changes, the one above it changes. Okay. Exactly that.
Okay. And differently from the 1S generator, by default is laying down. So it's like a pavement, it's like a floor, right?
Yeah.
So if I want something like a shelf, I have to rotate it 90 degrees to make it stand up, right?
Exactly.
And then the big question is, do we want rows to be connected with the end and the start of the RailClone? And for this example, I have a photo of a window, right? So if we have these the left side of the window to be the start and the right side of the window to be the end, those horizontal lines, the question we should ask ourselves is, do we want them connected to the side or not? And the thing is, if we don't want them connected, make another generator. This is the rule I came up with when I need to explain RailClone. So if we want just one side and many rows, those need two different generators, because otherwise the side will be cut, by the rows in some specific examples. Do you agree on this?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to thinking about kind of, to a certain extent, how it's made. So you're going to use the example of a bookshelf where the sides would normally go from top to bottom and then the shelves would butt into the side of that. And in the case of a simple bookshelf, there isn't necessarily a moulding that continues around that junction, right? So you can model them in two different arrays. And the point is, it seems more complex, right, to use two different generators to make the bookshelf, but actually what you've done by splitting into two is simplified it. Now you could do it in one, as you would have to with a window, but in order to target those ends and the intersections, it's a little bit more complicated. You have to use a macro, or you have to write a little bit of an expression to target those particular areas. So by not doing it that way, you've made life so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. If I can jump on my screen for a second,
Yep.
Here I have some like three modules, one for the start and the end, one for the bottom part and the top part, one for the back of the shelf. And since we need a 2S array, well, I can just show that first we don't need a spline to make an array. We can just define a length and a height, right? And since I want my shelf to be like standing up, I use the X rotation 90. And here I have some objects. So for example, I have the start, and the end. And I also have, the top and the bottom in here. You see? Now, the thing is, I need to jump back on my screen for a second. The last two rules we can talk about are this. First of all, if you don't have any corner in your geometry, right? It's better to feel, the top start, the top end, the bottom start and the bottom end. If you don't have a module for them, because maybe you don't need them, it's better to fill them with an empty object, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the reason for that being that if you don't put something in those inputs, the top, start, bottom, end, etc. inputs, what happens is that in the bottom and the top arrays, which remember are separate L1S arrays, it will take one of the side segments and it will think you want to put that in that input instead. So that's that rule basically. If there's nothing in that input, it will take a side segment and it'll put that in there. Now, if your side segment is very tall, much taller than which it's likely to be because it's going to be a plank, then it's going to push everything up in the air, including the sides, and your array's not going to fit together very well, and you probably end up with slices there that you don't want. So in order to counteract that, what Roberto will show you in a minute, I suspect, is that you put an empty segment in there, by which I just mean a segment with no geometry in it. And what that forces to happen is that the bottom row will continue right to the edge instead. So by putting nothing in there, like an empty segment in there, it forces it to follow right to the edge. If you don't put something in there, you'll get the sides going into the edge. So it'll try and go down to the ground on the sides. And it's kind of also a way of controlling whether you want the sides to go down past the bottom or whether you want the bottom to go past the side. So you've got those two options.
Yeah. So if you see on my screen, you see I put a segment, an empty segment with none in it in the four corners, and now it works fine. If I take one of that, you see, is repeating the sides again, and so is basically destroying my my objects. And if I put this empty object, it works fine. So I have the same object on top, on bottom. I have the same object on the side in the end, and I have one object, which is this one, as default in the back, and that basically will fill the entire structure if I change the rule here of the array to scale. Otherwise, I have this, repetitions, because this mesh is just, 10 centimeters wide. So it's up to you. I mean, if you want like a box to be, to cover the entire area, you can put this in scale mode. And I found myself doing this most of the time. Then the thing is, now, what if I want to have more, shelves, like horizontal ones? The problem is I don't want them to cut the side of my shelf. So I want just one side of the shelf, one start of the shelf, and many rows. And that's the moment when you need another generator. Because in one generator, you have one row, this one, and the next generator, you have, 4 or 5, as many as you want rows. And, that's why I have a second generator here, you see, where I have only the evenly wide shelves. And I can, control the number from here, you see, and everything works fine. So I know that maybe it sounds natural to put this in there, because already we have the same input in the first generator, but I'm going for a second generator because the number of rows in this one is different than the number of rows in this one. And this is probably the groundbreaking rule that, opened my eyes when I started learning about RailClone. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely the approach to that kind of object, because that's the way it's built. That's the way it's built in real life. It certainly simplifies things, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't doubt the alternative to target those corners is much more complicated in this case. So it's that thing where sometimes you feel like you're increasing like exactly what you've said. Sometimes you feel like I'm increasing complexity by adding an extra generator, but actually you're reducing it, and thinking about how to split it up is it's also one of the things I try and say to people often, is like, actually don't try and jam everything into one generator, split it up. Could be 5 generators, it might be easier than one.
Sure. One more thing we can do is then, expose parameters, because of course you want to create something that works every time. And it doesn't have to be something like you want to go in and change numbers from here. So for example, if I want to change, the height of, or the length of my object, you see, now I should change this in 2 generators, not only in 1, you see. So what can we do? We can expose parameters. So instead of moving this slider here, I just read the name X size, and then I select the generator, export parameters, and I'm looking here for the X size. I press OK, and now that I have the option there, and I do the same here, expose parameters, X size, And then I just need to ask myself, okay, what is this about? It's a length, it's in centimeters. So I'm going to pick a numeric parameter here, and I'm going to change the type into scene units and probably change the name of this in, I don't know, length, and put this one in both, you see, X size. Now it disappeared, but for a good reason. It's because now the number is basically outside. It's here in the parameter tab. Down here I have more than once, and I can put like 50, and now works, and I can play with this as much as I want, and this parameter change both of those generators at once. And I can go from this to something like very complicated, because it's about math. So it's about adding and subtracting numbers and dimensions from objects, from generators inside RailClone and wherever. I have a complicated version of this, but if you want to say something in the meanwhile, Paul, I will.
Yeah, you're just setting that up. I would just add that, so that's got two purposes, hasn't it, which you saw there. So the one purpose of those exported numeric nodes is to take the numbers out of the graph and put them into the modify panel. And that means that users who don't need or want to understand the graph can use that object without having to open the graph and having to look at that style and try and work it out. Or it might be just for your own ease of use. But it's good. Its second use is obviously to connect together multiple generators and nodes inside RailClone as well, so you can modify them from one place. There is another type of number node that I wanted to mention here, which is called a constant node. And a constant node allows you to connect together multiple parameters in the same way, exactly the same way as the numeric node. But the difference with that one is that it's not exported to the modify panel. So if you wanted to connect together different parameters in a RailClone graph, but you didn't want the user to be able to edit them, or you knew you weren't going to have to edit them often, you can use a constant node instead. So I just wanted to add that at that point.
Yeah, I mean, for example, let me find the way to use that. Well, we can. I mean, this is a little bit too complicated to show, but let me turn on the old one. Like this. And I don't know, maybe you want to add a defined number of evenly of this one, depending on the height of your shelf. So what we can do is we can take the height and we can do an arithmetic and maybe divide this by, I don't know, 2. And so we have a constant here, and we have 2 in the constant, and we need to expose the x evenly number, right? So I'm gonna right click, expose parameter, and search for the y evenly count, which is this, and it should be it. Okay, no, probably. Okay, so no, sorry. It's the height divided by 2 is probably, yeah, we need more. Normally, instead of an integer, we should work for a distance in this case. So the distance between each shelf. So let's say 50 centimeters. Now we have the total height divided by the number, but the distance between each shelf, and we have a number.
Yeah.
So we have the number of, and so if we change the height from here, we should have a different shelf every time, see, always at 50 centimeters between each one. Of course, we are in a rush, so it may sound more complicated than what it is. But
I think that's a good way of illustrating what a constant node does. The evenly settings have a distance mode that you could use instead, but that's another way of doing it. As with everything in RailClone, there's multiple approaches to doing everything, which is part of the fun of it. but yeah, I think that sort of illustrates it. So the constant node, as you can see, isn't exported to the parameters list on the right hand side.
All right, we are a little bit late, so I'm gonna rush.
There's a question regarding this case, Roberto.
Yes.
Amanda Levikov says, is there a way on that shelves to have distributed books, for example, will follow procedural workflows, so you make no longer shelves, or make more shelves than books will be this. I mean, this is kind of crazy. Is there a way on?
So you can. I'm reading.
Okay, cool.
I mean, you can think about books as shelves, right? So I have an example here, even if it's not the easiest example. But in order to have books distributed on the shelf, you can think like, you can make like a linear array first, which is basically of the size of one shelf, one single portion of the shelf. So you take the total length, you divide the total length by the number of divisions, and you have the size of one division. And you input the size of one division in the x size of this linear array. And then you just take the single, linear array, and you put in the evenly input of another generator. And so it's gonna, put the each family of book in each part of the shelf, and you can use this in the bottom, so you fill the first line at the bottom, and also in the Y evenly, so you fill all the other shelves, I would say. Let me see if I can turn this on. It was working 2 minutes ago. Now I have only one shelf, but if I increase this, let me see. See? So let's say 3. Yeah, there's some other control, of course, you have to do, because now you see these shelves are probably too high. There are too many. So, but these are basically one linear array, one S array. In the same way we distribute these shelves, we distribute those books.
So yeah,
maybe we can pack like a simple example 3ds Max file and share with everyone.
I think what I might do, we have a tutorial on populating shelves with books, but it's one of the first that I did, and so RailClone's moved a long way since then, and the approach, because we talked about this, didn't we, a couple of days ago, this book thing. I think it probably deserves a new tutorial, basically, because the approach that you're using, where you're nesting one generator inside another, there didn't exist when we recorded the original one. So I think it's time for an update on that one. So I think this little example would benefit from a slightly deeper dive in a pre-recorded tutorial, which I'm happy to do, unless you wanted to steal it from me.
Maybe we can do like a simple version, then improve it with all this parameters and constant. And anyway, next topic is about endless textures. So what is an endless texture? So I'm back on my slides. An endless texture is mainly a texture that try to fix one big issue, which is visible repetitions. And the problems we can have with those, with a normal texture is you have one element, and you can see that element repeated over and over, and that's a problem normally. So what can you do to solve that problem? you make a big texture with a lot of elements inside. Like, I don't know, you make a texture that covers 10 meters of space instead of 1 meter. But then the problem is if you zoom in that texture, then you can see that for each, for example, brick, you have few pixels because it's a huge texture with a lot of bricks. And so each of one of them is very low quality. So my idea is to come up with a type of texture that can be placed one close to the other. And the inside of the texture is always different, okay? But only the tiles, only the areas on the border change. Sorry, is the same. So is, you know, the bricks in here, which are white, stay the same and allow these different texture to blend in, to be, you know, to fit one next to the other, while the inside always change. And so you don't have the feeling that there is a repetition. And you know, so we want to avoid repetition. We want to keep good quality overall. And the solution should work with every type of tile. And if you look on internet, there is a tutorial. If you see on my screen, I put a tutorial how to make this stuff on 3ds Max, on Unreal. It's a long procedure, but once you have it, and you do not have to do this more than once. The idea is to use RailClone to scatter those textures, because in the past there was like the Berkeley tiles or whatever it is. Nowadays you can use RailClone to generate, you know, the pavement or the wall you want. Now, if you see in this screen, I have just, you know, a simple plane made of random squares, because I have like one squares repeated over and over inside the spline with a 2S generator, and I have a Corona multimap. So for each plane, I have a different color. But then I have these textures which are made with Substance Designer, and these textures are special because those are endless textures. So basically, the difference between these textures and the others that, you know, that you may have is that the inside is always it's different, and the outside is always the same. And if I start putting them there, you see, now, of course, you may see some repetition because we have only 4 of them, but you see, is like a simple way to break the tiling, okay? And since, now, if you want a better result, of course, you need more of them, and just add some sloth in there and load more of them. And the good thing is that it looks different from far away, and you can keep a good quality when you go close enough to the object, because those are many textures, not just one. And if I may jump on Substance Designer, the idea behind, you know, this is, I would say, pretty simple. No, doesn't matter what type of pattern we want to work with. It should basically, you know, we need to find a way to create a mask that understand where the borders of, you know, our, you know, objects are. So all the stones or all the tiles that are cut in half, and to do so, we start from the height map. So normally when you work in Substance Designer, you start working on the displacement, and you do the diffuse, the reflection, wherever. And so we go from a simple texture shape to threshold, because we want something which is a very sharp result. And then we want a flood fill, which is a crazy map which makes no sense if you use it by itself. It's just a translator. So you get through the flood fill to something else, like a flood fill to position, and the flood fill to position actually understands where every tile piece is, And then it looks like this because it's a mix of two different gradients, one that goes from right to left and one that goes from top to bottom. And you can have both of them if you use a RGBA split node. As you can see, this is one gradient and this is the other. And then you can use a histogram scan to say, okay, I don't want all of this. I just want the first, you see, the first row or the first column of tiles. And you can even put this one inverted on top of the original shape. And so you end up with the only the tiles that are cut, which are on the border. And so this is the simplified version. I have my own version of the mask, which is a little more complicated because I made some, specific things like, for example, a way to understand how many tiles I have, how big in terms of percentage the border should be. So you see, in the end, I get this automatically without changing any threshold. And what you may want to have is an edge detect on the end, because maybe you want to fill the area between all this, bricks with some, with something more. What happens is this. Everyone, working in Substance Designer is used to make something like a shader, like, I don't know, I made this crazy example with a lot of colors just as an example. So we start from like a shape, we get the edge color, we get some maps, we get a displacement from this, we get a color from this, we get some glossiness. In the end, if you're working in Substance Designer and you want to do some endless textures, all you want to do is to make a different output, and you want the shape of your stones or tiles there. And this is a very simple thing to have, because since you work from displacement in Substance Designer, you always have the shape of your objects. And once you have that, you can make another shader, and you can do this. You can drag and drop your map, which is this one. You see, you can duplicate it once. So it's like having twice the same material. And then what you want to do is to blend, for example, I'll show you the diffuse example. I blend two diffuses, and then I'm using the mask, the smart mask from the shape. So this, you see, understand the bricks that are on the edges of your texture, and you can mask them out like this. And you select the second type of the second texture, the second version of your texture, and you just change the random seed. And so this basically will change the inner part. You see, now the inner part of my texture is different. You can see if I'm moving the random seed, but the stones on the edge will stay the same. And maybe I need to invert this. Yes, I need to invert this. You see, so you see, whatever is the same, one or the other. And then I want to maybe have a little bit more of edge here. And so in this way, I just keep changing the random seed, and I have, you see, the same tiles on the edge and different on the inside. And I save this as a JPEG. When it's saved, change the seed again, save again, and so on. So I can have as many versions of this I need, and I can get to this result. Now, jumping to the last example, which is something that uses RailClone a lot more. My question was, can I improve this thing? Because there is a big issue when you're working with textures and when you're working with displacement. And the issue is your objects are basically, there's no beneath. So if I have some stones I cannot have like, you know, the bottom part of those stones because displacement works only up, right? So what can I do? I came up with an idea, and, you know, we jump to the last example, which is maybe more interesting for everyone, which I think is a good idea if you are struggling with natural stones, like, you know, those round pavements, or like those brick walls made of natural stones. And what I want to do is I want to get a silhouette. So this, I show you my, like the procedure I made, and then just the end result. The first thing I thought was, okay, let's bring you know, an endless texture in 3ds Max, something like this one. You see, I just colored the inside green and the side by red and blue, and then I just, you know, draw a pattern. You see, so I end up with this silhouette, and I end up with this mesh. So if you made a RailClone with this mesh, you can just put this mesh close, you know, one next to the other, right? And oops, sorry, and like this, you know, but in RailClone, and this mesh will look like infinite, and then we can just play with the color of those stones and have a nice, you know, result, because it will look like something like this. So even if it's the same mesh over and over, when you randomize the color of, you know, those instances, this is the result you get. So it's a great result. I like it. I was very happy. And I said, okay, what do I want? What if I want to improve this effect even more? What if I want even more randomization? And the idea is you keep the same silhouette, but you draw, you see, different stones. And this is a good idea, because if this basically mesh can be placed close to the previous one, then I will not see any cut, any hole in the RailClone geometry. But you see, this mesh is different than this one. So I increase the level of randomness. I was very happy. And then, you know, I thought myself, yeah, but this is time consuming, you know, drawing all the stones, it takes a lot. Okay, cool. I can, you know, start from the same silhouette, like a spline, put an editable poly on top, the spline becomes a plane, and then I let the retopology adjust, you know, modifier to define, you know, the polygons, and I can just use an inset, you know, or a chamfer to make some holes, and then I get my, you know, geometry as many times I want. And that's a viable way, that's a good way. Or you can tessellate that geometry, and with the, you know, here, the polygon models, you can click on generate topology, and you can use one of these, you know, preset, you know, to do that in like automatically, which is a great thing also. I would say that this is a little bit less, you have less control if you do this, right? You cannot control exactly where to place your stones, but this is a viable way. And then that's not finished, because there's another way to make it even better, and that is, you know, using real geometry. You know, instead of defining your stones just by a spline and then extruding them, you can use actual like geometry, I don't know, from Quixel, from Megascan, from your library. And so I spent like an hour, you know, keeping the same silhouette as a you know, border, and I placed little by little those rocks in the same area, and then attach them all together and get the same result. And then I ask, and this is really the last thing, the last effort for today, I said, can I do something better than this? Because the thing is, if you have a silhouette like this, The only movement you can do is just a translation. You can just, put this stuff one next to the other. But in RailClone, I cannot tell RailClone to randomly like rotate this, because then this is not, you see, I cannot put this one close to the other one. It's not matching anymore, So if I want to increase the amount of randomness, I came up with this idea. And so what I've done is this. I pick just a map, a cell noise in Substance Designer. And I, like this, sorry. And then I say, okay, I want this special pattern to work no matter the rotation. So instead of working only in one way, it should work no matter what, if I rotate it 90 degrees, 180, flipping it vertically. So to increase the rotation, to increase the randomness, I take the same pattern, I rotate it 90 degrees, and then I put on top of the first one. And then I take this one, I rotate it another 90 degrees, and I put on top of the original one. And then I ask the float fill to generate, a pattern that looks like this. And if I put this one close to the other, you see, now this is a better endless pattern, because if I take these mesh, right, if I take this shape and I rotate it 90 degrees, doesn't matter if I rotate it 90 degrees, it will basically fit one close to the other, no matter what. So long story short, I bring this texture inside 3ds Max, as you can see here, and I put all these stones little by little, you see, in order to match those, the silhouette of that texture. See, it took me a while, but I've done it. And then this can be rotated no matter what you do, you see. So the final result is something like this. I have my rock into a randomized node with, as it is. And then I took this one and I randomized it. I rotated 90 degrees, and I rotated 180 degrees, and I rotated 270 degrees. And also I can do another copy of this and maybe flip it vertical, and also, plug this into this randomize. And then I will get a random version of the first rock inside the 2S array. And, I also randomize the height, because at that point you can do wherever you want with your mesh, and it will always, fit one close to the other. And so I'm very happy with the result. And the crazy thing is, you can do one more step. You can duplicate this array and just make those stones smaller. So with one 3D pattern, you can actually, fill an area like this, and everything looks completely different. And I'm very happy with the result. I'm very happy with this idea because, it's just one pattern.
I love that you've shrunk them down and filled in the gaps. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roberto.
Yeah.
That was a bumper edition of the Ask iToo live stream.
Absolutely.
You've covered so much ground, and it's going to take me a while to digest it all, I think, and probably most of the users as well. But really valuable stuff.
Sorry for the technical issues, but
Oh no, it's nothing.
It's not at all.
Challenge.
It means it's real.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, guys. I'm very happy that everything worked. Probably we didn't cover in details everything, but I thought that the idea today was to plant some seeds, some ideas, and let everybody to watch maybe the live stream again, and take what they need from it.
Yeah, as always,
course,
we'll chapter this up so that people can access each section quickly, and we'll share it with everyone. We'll add any useful links that were added to the comments to the description as well, so that people can find anything we've talked about in the live stream in the description later on there. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Jaime or Roberto?
I want to say again, thanks to Roberto. I mean, guys, we can tell you that he took a lot of his time, take it into preparing this live stream and gathering all this information. So dude, thanks. And we will have you back for sure.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Yep. And thanks everyone for showing up. This again will be on our channel in a few minutes, as soon as YouTube things escape. We will be back in 1 month. The intention is to alternate live streams with invites and live streams between Paul and myself. So we're going to try to keep on doing that and see you in a month. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. A huge thank you, Roberto.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Ciao, Roberto.
Thanks. See you next time.
Gracias. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.